Join me in prayer. Oh God, open us up today. Open our eyes that we might see, and our ears that we might hear your word somewhere in the midst of these words. Open our hearts, God, that your word might fall in. And then, O Lord, open our hands, that in response we might serve you and our neighbor. Amen. A while ago, my wife Dee and I were invited to an event, a benefit event for MD Anderson Hospital. And it was a big deal. It was, lots of people there. They had these vintage bands, that's what I would call them, play. Beach Boys and others that were, that I watched a long time ago. And they did their best, I've got to say. They still had the gusto, even if their voices were, but they really gave it a good run. Well, while we were there in the beginning of it, there was a reception going on, and we looked over, and our next door neighbors were there. Now, our next door neighbors are a young couple, have small children. They are from Romania, I think, originally. They're both physicians, and she works for MD Anderson Hospital, so it was very logical that she would be there. And so we went and we had a nice conversation, and partway through our conversation with them, she said, "You see that guy over there? See him? See him? He won the Nobel Prize for medicine." And I was like, whoa, it was Jim Allison, who is a Nobel Prize winner, and I looked over at him. He looked like he might have won the Nobel Prize. He looked kind of Albert Einstein-y, maybe really smart, and I thought, wow, that's just amazing. And then I just looked around and I thought, I wonder how many other, how much other greatness is right here in this room, And then as the event went on, the reason Beach Boys were there is Jeff Bostic, one of the band's members, had been treated for cancer at MD Anderson Hospital, so he'd come to play. And they had the team who was treating him come up on stage. And sure enough, it was our neighbor. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's bright. Like, I was all worked up about the Nobel Prize winner, and she lives right next door to me, and her kids throw stuff over the fence, And I thought, that's just crazy. Do you realize how much greatness is around us? And I don't just mean smart people. I mean, in every person that is around you, there's something in their heart or in their life that God is doing, that God is working through, that is just amazing. If we'll just pay attention. So we're talking about slowing down. How can we slow down so that we can pay attention? Last week, we talked about the 90th Psalm that says, so teach us to count our days, right? We only have so much time. We're all going to die. And what are we going to do? So we can't waste any of that. We have to be intentional about what we do with our time. And the second decision is we have to be intentional about how we decide to experience that time. Will we really fully experience it? Or will we just let it pass us by? Because the world is moving really fast, and it wants to just draw us along at that speed. Well, today we want to unpack that more and say, how can we stop so that we can focus on people? And I want to say early on in this message that I'm really preaching to myself. I'm a person who lives in my thoughts a lot, who lives drawn by tasks a lot, and I realize as I'm getting older how much I'm missing in other people. And maybe that's you too. So before we get too far, I want us to look at our memory verse and take a look at it. We're doing this every week. It's at the top of your bulletin, and it is from Matthew about how we are to maybe quit that pushing forward and that striving all the time. I want us to say it together. Let's say it in unison from Matthew 11:28 through 30. Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This is how we know that Jesus liked his eggs runny. It says, my yoke is easy. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have done that 4 times today, and I've gotten barely a groan. And so in between services, somebody said, I think you should keep it in, because I vowed to take it out because it worked so poorly. But you've helped me. Thank you so much. I feel better now. We know what a yoke is. A yoke is that it is a shoulder harness that would bind 2 animals together, usually donkeys or oxen, to pull a plow or to pull a wagon. And so it became sort of, it began to connote 2 things hooked together. Like Paul talks about being unequally yoked in marriage, right? Meaning you're hooked together in a mission, but you're unequally yoked. Well, we are unequally yoked with Jesus. He's saying, when he says my yoke, he's saying, yoke yourself to me. It was a common term that was used when someone would be a follower of some rabbi. They would say, well, I wear the yoke of Jesus. I wear that's the rabbi I've chosen to follow. So when we talk about our mission as living and loving like Jesus, equipping families and individuals to live and love like Jesus as our church's mission, what we're saying is we want people to wear the yoke of Christ, to follow Jesus. And here's what's more important about it. Jesus goes with us. It's not like Jesus has done it and says, hey, y'all, come on. It's like, I'm going to do it with you. And so that's why the yoke is easy, is because we don't have to carry all the weight. Right? We're yoked to Jesus, so we are moving forward with Christ alongside us. So what we're trying to talk about today is how did Jesus treat other people? How did Jesus experience other people? And our scripture today is one of those that is so powerful. It is found in Mark and in Luke. It is a sandwich story. And by that I mean it is a story that's in the middle of another story. And here's the other story because it's important too. Jesus has been summoned to the home of Jairus, who is a synagogue leader. And he is very important. And his daughter is dying. And so Jesus is on his way to heal the daughter of Jairus who's dying. And along the way, so last week we talked about the tyranny of the urgent. We've got the urgent here, right? We're urgent. The daughter is dying. We got to go. And then on top of that, there are all these other people around. What was it the scripture said, verse 45? Master, the crowds are hemming you in and pressing against you. Perhaps you have felt that experience. There's just so many people all around. I can't even see one of them. So both of those things are at work. And a woman who has had a flow of blood, a hemorrhage for 12 years, reaches out and touches the hem of his garment. We sang about that in the Spirit's Tether today. Touches the hem of his garment. And here's the amazing thing. He stops. Who touched me? In the midst of the urgent, in the midst of all these people pressing around, he stopped. He gave her his attention. It's all about our attention. It's all about what we choose to give attention to. I don't know if you've had children or grandchildren or neighbors, and you're holding a 1-year-old. You're holding a 1-year-old in your arms, right here on your hip like this, and you're talking to a friend. And you're talking about, how was your day? Blah, blah, blah. The 1-year-old reaches over and takes hold of your chin and turns your head towards you. Have you had that experience? It is the funniest thing. You're like, whoa! And they're like, look at me. I need your attention right now. And then you kind of give them tacit attention, and then you go talking to your friend and they grab it again and look at me. I think buried in all of our lives is that, oh man, would somebody just notice me? Right? Sometimes we've gotten so used to not being noticed, we don't want to be noticed. We've sort of wanted to fade into the background. Here's the topic sentence for today's sermon. We have to slow down so we can pay attention to the things that God says are important, that Jesus says are important, that we know are important. We have to slow down so we can give attention to those. And I submit to you that what's important to God and important to Jesus and probably important to you is other people. That's what matters. I don't know if you remembered the play, Arthur Miller's play, Death of a Salesman. Maybe you read it in high school. And it's the story of Willie Loman, this tragic salesman who's sort of a failure at everything he does and always wants to sort of really succeed, and he just can't seem to get there. Makes some bad decisions, and in the end he probably takes his own life. It's not actually in there, but that's the implication. And here's what the play says. After his death, his wife, Linda, says, "I don't say he's a great man. Willie Loman never made a lot of money. His name was never in the paper. He's not the finest character that ever lived, but he's a human being. And a terrible thing is happening to him. So attention must be paid. He's not allowed to fall into his grave like an old dog. Attention must finally be paid to such a person." If we can just manage our attention so that we stop long enough, use that executive function in our heads to stop the whirlwind that leads us along and pay attention to the people around us. Now, I think there are 3 levels of attention we need to recognize. Here's the first one. First level of attention is just to notice. Just to notice them. That's what's so powerful about this story. It's like the disciples are like, "What do you mean, who touched you?" Well, I just noticed that the power went out for me. I noticed this woman. That the choir sang what Sid learned was one of the anthems that I love so much. That as their call to prayer. "Slow me down, Lord, I'm moving too fast. I can't see my brother as he's going past. I don't even notice him." This week, our family got a text from my daughter who lives in Los Angeles. And it said this: "I'm in Whole Foods with Jennifer Lopez." She was pumped. She said, "J-Lo, the best sighting ever I have had. I am here with somebody important." And we do that when we go to Los Angeles to visit her. We go to the Grove, which is like the mall, kind of outdoor mall there. And we're like, is Denzel here anywhere? I'm always looking for somebody that I can just see, you know. And what happens is when you get your eyes up and start looking at people, like really start looking for people, you notice people. Right? And it's probably not Denzel, but if you could just notice people, just notice that they're there. I wonder how many people are at your workplace that you just walk by and don't even notice. That's the first level, to notice. Now, the second level of attention is it's built on the first, but it's probably maybe the most important, and that is to actually know people. Not just to notice them, but to know them. Scott McClellan is just the recently retired CEO at H-E-B Foods, and he came to speak here at St. Luke's as part of our series called Working Faith. We're doing this over the years, trying to turn people so that we recognize that we need to take our faith into our workplace. That we believe that our job is to transform the city right? Our vision is of a city transformed by the love of Jesus, and if we're going to do that, part of it is community service, the things that we do in the community, but part of it is what we do at work. And so he's speaking, and one of the questions, or somehow the conversation came up about how he deals with the employees at his workplace. And he said, this is the one thing I wrote down and circled 3 times. He said, the value that I carry most in dealing with employees at the workplace, and he didn't call them employees, I think they were teammates or something, he said, is curiosity. I thought that was so interesting. It wasn't, how can I align them with our values? How can I make them do what we want them to do? How can I have them, follow exactly what we want them to follow? It was, I'm curious about them. I want to know about their lives. I want to know what makes them tick. I want to know what they do at home. I want to know if they like what they do at work. I want to know if there's something else they'd rather do. I was thinking, wow, how awesome to just have that experience of going in and just being curious. What most of us do is we go into people's lives with an evaluative function. We evaluate people. We put them into a category. Are they Republican or Democrat? Are they Christian or not Christian? Are they rich or are they poor? And then we've got these other categories that now are in fashion about where they fit on the personality chart, right? Are they an Enneagram 4 or an Enneagram 7? And all of those things are valuable in us understanding others, I guess. But what they tend to do is make us categorize them so that we can manage them. Andy Stanley has a great line. I've shared it with you before. He says, what we do when we go meet people is we size them up and sort them out. Size them up and sort them out so we can get them in the category. What if we just wanted to know them? And what happens is when we just want to know them, we're so blessed by that. I've been reading this book called Wrapped, Attention and the Focused Life. It's by a woman named who does a lot of science writing and some spiritual writing too, named Winifred Gallagher. And here's what she says. Paying attention to someone else confers the big psychological benefit of structuring your experience and distracting you from the self-referential rumination that so often takes a negative cast. In other words, when you're looking inside you and what you're doing and you often think, oh boy, I'm just not living up to it. And then she goes on to say, the message that paying attention to the other guy often helps you more than him is not one that you often hear from the therapy and psychopharmacology industries. In their different ways, each encourages you to look inward, whether psychologically or biologically, for answers to a better life. Well, I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both and. I think we do need to look inside ourselves and see what the motivations are and what's going on in our hearts and what our hang-ups are and why we feel the way we feel. But sometimes, frankly, we just contemplate our navels so much that we can't seem to get out of our own heads and our own lives and pay attention and notice somebody else and really come to know them. Just really try and quit thinking about ourselves and think about somebody else. So yesterday, I told you that I'm preaching to myself, so I decided yesterday I need to practice this. And I went to the donut store. That's not practicing this, that's just an aside. But I went to the donut store, and there was a young woman behind the counter, I'm going to say early 20s. And I said, so I placed my order for donuts. And then I said, so I guess you didn't win the lottery yesterday. It was like $1.3 billion or something. I figured she probably wouldn't have come to work. And she said, no, I didn't. I had a ticket, but I didn't. I said, I didn't either. And so then I just said, so what would you do if you'd have won the lottery? And she said, I would have built the biggest dog rescue center in the world. It would have been the biggest dog rescue center, and I would have connected it to all the other dog rescue centers all over the country. And we would have shared best practices. I would have helped to fund them. I'd have helped train volunteers. I'd have done all the... She had a plan on what she was going to do with her $1.3 billion. So I just thought, how interesting. Now, her boss is standing over there looking at me going, there's a line behind you, and all of that. But I walked out of there just so happy. I just thought, there was this nice lady, and I just had a great conversation with her. Now, there's some people who do this very naturally, and others of us that have to work at it, that we have to, so we have to structure it. We have to decide to do it. Slow down enough. We have to put some speed bumps in, and some school zones in, and some trains to stop behind. Some of you got caught at the train on the way to church today. Where you have to structure them into your lives so that you can find time to talk to somebody. Just think this week, think of 2 people that maybe you could get to know better. What a blessing. All right. We notice them. Second, we know them. Here's the third thing. We serve them. See, if you approach with an evaluative function, then you come out of an evaluation with how do I fix them or how do I ignore them. But if you come with a how do I know them, then your answer is how can I serve you? The difference between serving and fixing is that fixing puts things in your control, in your court, instead of theirs. Whereas to serve someone is saying, how can I serve you? What is it you need? It's up to you, not up to me. Jesus knew the woman's need. It was her faith that made her reach out. And he, without even thinking, responded. How can we serve one another? That's what Jesus, talking about living and loving like Jesus, he said, I came to be a servant. How can I serve you? I have a friend, we have coffee or breakfast, I don't know, every 3 months or so. And but we text back and forth periodically. And he's every time we finish a text, he says something like, think of your 3 things, or remember the 3 things. So when we get together for breakfast, he says, I can't leave until you tell me 3 things I can do for you. I just need 3 things I can do for you. Well, I got to be honest, it's sometimes hard to think of them. I always say, you can pray for me. You can pray for me. Okay, that's a deal. I'll pray for you. You pray for me. And then I try and think of some other way he can serve, because I can see the twinkle in his eye, the joy that comes with him wanting to do something for somebody else. If we can get our minds there, what a blessing that is. For the people around us, but for us. So it's just not easy. The world isn't designed right now with the speed at which it's moving. But we can slow down and get our heads up and look around and notice the incredible gift of the people that God has put around us, and come to know them and serve them. Gracious and loving God, thank you so much for the people you've put in our lives who have shaped us and encouraged us. We confess that there are people that we're missing, blessings that we're missing because we're just moving too fast. We've built tight circles of friendships around ourselves and aren't really interested sometimes in those others. Forgive us, God, and open us up to just the joy of other people that you put in our lives to see, to notice, to know, to serve. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen.